My friends, today we gather to reflect on a matter of great importance in our lives: anger. It is something we all have felt at some point in our lives, something that can grip us, hold us captive, and cloud our judgment. And while anger is a natural emotion, if left unchecked, it has the power to destroy relationships, peace, and even our own happiness. So how do we let go of anger and remain unaffected by the actions of others? This question is one that touches the very core of our being. It is a question of grace, wisdom, and the ability to rise above the storms of life. Let us delve into this matter, seeking not only understanding, but the practical steps that will lead us to peace. First, we must acknowledge that anger is something everyone faces. It is part of the human experience. It is not something that makes you weak or less than, but it is something we must learn to handle. Anger often arises when we feel wronged, when others hurt us, or when things do not go as we expect. It can come in many forms: frustration, irritation, resentment, or even rage. It may be aimed at a person, an event, or sometimes even ourselves. But what is important is that we recognize anger for what it is: a temporary emotion, a fleeting feeling that can come and go, but if left unchecked, it can cause irreversible harm. How then do we let go of this anger? How do we rid ourselves of its grip and find peace? The first step is to recognize that we have a choice. We often think that our emotions control us, that we are slaves to how we feel in a given moment. But the truth is, we have been given the incredible gift of choice. The ability to choose how we respond, to choose what we hold on to, and to choose what we release. Anger is no different. We can choose to hold on to it, to nurture it, to let it fester in our hearts, or we can choose to let it go, to release it into the winds of time, knowing that it no longer has a hold on us. But this is not always easy, is it? We want to be right. We want others to see our point of view. We want the world to align with our desires. And when it doesn't, we feel anger rise within us. Yet in those moments, we must remember that our peace is not dependent on the actions of others. We must rise above the temptation to retaliate, to strike back, or to hold on to resentment. The very act of letting go of anger is an act of faith. Faith in the fact that we do not have to be controlled by the actions of others. We have the power to choose our peace. The next step is to shift our perspective. Often our anger is rooted in a misunderstanding or a failure to see things from another's point of view. How often have we felt wronged, only to later realize that the other person may have acted out of their own pain or insecurity? When we hold on to anger, we refuse to see the situation through the eyes of compassion and grace. But if we open our hearts to understanding, we can begin to see that many times people act out of their own struggles, their own burdens. They may not even be aware of the harm they are causing. And so, instead of reacting with anger, we can respond with empathy, with a spirit of reconciliation, and with the hope that we can help others see a better way. Now, my friends, let us remember that forgiving others is not for their sake, but for ours. When we choose to forgive, we release ourselves from the chains of bitterness and resentment. Forgiveness is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength. It is the ability to say, I will not allow this person or this situation to define my peace. I will let it go. And in doing so, we set ourselves free. For holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It hurts us more than it hurts them. It eats away at our peace, our joy, and our very soul. But when we forgive, when we let go, we find a freedom that surpasses all understanding. Let us also remember that the power to forgive and release anger is not something we do in our own strength. No, we are not called to walk this journey alone. We are not left to figure it out on our own. We have been given a source of strength that is beyond our own understanding, a power that comes from above, and it is through this strength that we find the courage to forgive and to let go. It is through this strength that we are able to rise above the petty squabbles, the insults, and the offenses of the world. It is through this strength that we can stay unaffected by the words and actions of others. When we draw on this strength, we no longer need to react in the way the world expects us to. We can choose to be calm, to be steady, to be unshaken, even when others are trying to shake us. In the midst of a world that often seems full of hatred, division, and anger, we are called to be different. We are called to be peacemakers, to be those who bring light into the darkness, who show the way of love and grace. And the way to do this is not by pretending that anger does not exist, but by acknowledging it, confronting it, and choosing to rise above it. When we let go of anger, we are not saying that the wrongdoer is right or that the offense doesn't matter. We are simply saying that we choose to walk a different path, a path of peace, a path of love. There will be times when others will try to provoke us, when they will seek to bring out the worst in us. But in those moments, we must remember that we are not defined by the actions of others. We are defined by the choices we make. We can choose to let it control us, to allow it to shape our responses, or we can choose to let it go, to release it and stay true to the peace that resides within us. To let go of anger is not a one-time decision. It is a daily choice. Every day we must choose to walk in peace, to let go of the hurts of yesterday, and to refuse to allow the actions of others to steal our joy. But let me remind you that this is not an impossible task, for we do not walk this journey alone. We are given the strength, the wisdom, and the grace to face each day with a heart full of peace, a heart that is not shaken by the storms of life. When we release our anger and choose to stay unaffected by others, we are also making a choice to protect our own hearts. We are choosing to guard our peace, to guard our joy, and to protect our mental and emotional well-being. There is no greater gift we can give ourselves than the gift of inner peace. The ability to stand firm in the midst of life's challenges and the freedom that comes from choosing not to be shaken. And so, my friends, as we leave this place today, let us remember that anger is not our enemy. Our enemy is the choice to hold on to it. The real enemy is the decision to let anger control us, to let it shape our thoughts, our words, and our actions. But we are called to rise above that. We are called to live in peace, to let go of anger, and to remain unaffected by the actions of others. When we do this, we not only set ourselves free, but we also become a light in a world that desperately needs it. Let us choose peace. Let us choose grace. Let us choose to let go of anger and to remain steadfast in our commitment to walk in love. For in doing so, we not only change ourselves, but also the world around us. May we always remember that our peace is a gift, and it is one that no one can take away unless we allow them to. So let go of anger, choose peace, and walk in the light of love. And may the peace that surpasses all understanding guard your hearts and minds forevermore. Let us then reflect on the nature of anger itself. Anger is a natural emotion, as we have discussed, but it is one that often blinds us to the greater truths in life. It can cloud our thinking and prevent us from seeing situations for what they truly are. When we become angry, we are no longer able to think clearly. We become overwhelmed by the heat of our emotions, and the clarity of mind that is required to resolve conflict or make wise decisions eludes us. Anger has the power to distort our judgment, turning even the smallest of offenses into monumental wrongs. We have all been there, haven't we? A small misunderstanding escalates into an argument. A comment that wasn't intended to hurt us stirs up feelings that we cannot seem to shake. It is in these moments that the ability to stay unaffected by others becomes so crucial. It is not enough to merely react in the moment. We must train ourselves to step back, to breathe deeply, and to respond thoughtfully. The more we practice this discipline, the easier it becomes. This practice begins with awareness. We must become aware of when anger begins to rise within us. We must learn to recognize the signs of anger before they take full control. Perhaps it is a tightening in the chest or a rush of heat to the face. Maybe it is the voice that begins to rise or the mind that starts racing with thoughts of revenge or justice. The key is to catch it early, before it takes hold of our actions. Once we recognize it, we must consciously choose to let go of it. We must acknowledge it without letting it define us. We must allow it to pass through us like a cloud passing across the sky, knowing that it does not have to linger. The more we practice this, the more skilled we become at remaining unaffected by the anger of others. Another important aspect of letting go of anger is to examine our expectations. Often, our anger is born from the gap between our expectations and reality. We expect people to behave in a certain way, to treat us with respect, to meet our needs, or to follow through on promises. When these expectations are not met, we feel betrayed or disappointed, and anger arises. But the truth is, our expectations are often unrealistic. We expect perfection from others, and when they fall short, we are left feeling hurt and angry. To let go of anger, we must adjust our expectations. We must come to terms with the fact that no one is perfect and that people will sometimes disappoint us. This does not mean that we condone harmful behavior or that we allow ourselves to be mistreated. It simply means that we understand that others are fallible just as we are. When we accept this reality, we are less likely to become angry when someone does something that we perceive as a wrong. Instead of reacting with anger, we can respond with understanding, recognizing that the actions of others do not define us, and that we do not have to allow their shortcomings to affect our peace. We must also remember that there are times when we are unable to change the actions of others. This is a difficult truth to accept. We may want to change someone's behavior, to correct their mistakes, to make them understand how they have hurt us. But the reality is, we cannot control others. We cannot force someone to apologize, to take responsibility, or to see things from our perspective. And when we try to force others to change, we often find that our anger only grows. It becomes a never-ending cycle of frustration and disappointment. To find peace, we must accept that we cannot control others. We cannot control their actions, their thoughts, or their responses. The only thing we can control is how we react. And so, when someone's behavior causes us anger, we must choose to let it go, to release our desire to change them, and to focus on how we will respond. When we let go of our need to control others, we free ourselves from the weight of frustration and resentment. As we continue on this journey of letting go of anger and remaining unaffected by others, it is helpful to turn to our own inner strength. We may find that the anger of others begins to trigger something within us. Perhaps it touches a wound from the past, an unresolved hurt that has not fully healed. Or perhaps it brings up feelings of inadequacy, fear, or insecurity. When we are able to identify the root of our anger, we gain valuable insight into what is truly bothering us. This self-awareness is the key to healing. It is not enough to simply suppress our anger or push it aside. We must deal with the underlying issues that cause it. Only when we address the root causes of our anger can we begin to experience true freedom. For example, if we find that we are easily angered by others' criticism, it may be a sign that we have unresolved issues with our own self-worth. We may feel insecure or unloved, and the criticism of others magnifies those feelings. In this case, the anger is not about the person who criticizes us, but about our own inner struggles. By addressing these insecurities and learning to accept ourselves as we are, we can release the power that others' words have over us. When we heal from our own wounds, we become less affected by the words and actions of others. There is another powerful tool that we can use to stay unaffected by the anger of others. Prayer. In times of frustration and anger, we can turn to prayer for guidance and peace. Prayer is not just about asking for help. It is a way of surrendering our burdens and allowing a higher power to give us the strength we need to navigate life's challenges. When we pray, we invite divine intervention into our lives, and we open ourselves up to peace, love, and wisdom. Prayer has the power to change our hearts and minds, and it is through prayer that we can release our anger and remain unaffected by the anger of others. In moments when we feel the weight of anger bearing down on us, prayer offers us a refuge. It reminds us that we are not alone in our struggles, that there is a greater force at work in our lives. It helps us to release our frustrations and align our hearts with a higher purpose. Through prayer, we gain perspective, and we are reminded that our peace comes from within, not from the actions of others. Furthermore, as we strive to let go of anger, we must cultivate a spirit of gratitude. Gratitude is a powerful antidote to anger. When we focus on what we have rather than what we lack, we begin to see life through a lens of abundance rather than scarcity. We begin to appreciate the good in our lives and the blessings we have received, rather than dwelling on the negative. Gratitude shifts our focus away from the wrongs we feel have been done to us, and it reminds us of the beauty and goodness that surrounds us. When we practice gratitude, we begin to see the world in a different light. Instead of reacting with anger to every slight or injustice, we can respond with appreciation for the many gifts we have been given. Gratitude allows us to rise above the petty grievances of life and to focus on what truly matters. It gives us the strength to move forward with peace and joy, even in the face of difficulty. In the end, letting go of anger and remaining unaffected by others is not about becoming passive or allowing ourselves to be mistreated. It is about reclaiming our peace and our power. It is about refusing to be controlled by the actions of others and choosing instead to live in a state of grace, forgiveness, and understanding. It is about rising above the noise of the world and finding peace within ourselves. It is a journey that requires effort, discipline, and patience, but it is a journey that leads to freedom. So, my friends, I encourage you today to let go of the anger that binds you. Choose peace over resentment, love over hatred, and understanding over judgment. Know that you have the power to rise above the anger of others and to live a life of peace and joy. You are not defined by the actions of others, but by the choices you make. Let those choices be ones of peace, grace, and forgiveness. When you do, you will find a freedom that surpasses all understanding. A freedom that comes from letting go of anger and choosing to remain unaffected by the storms of life.